There's going to be some major shakeups, particularly at the top of the running back rankings this week. Starting out with tier 1. I've got Devon Etienne at number 1 and Bijan at number 2. So a couple weeks ago, I was getting questions about Devon Etienne and why wasn't he ever in the first tier. So now I've massively overcorrected on this one, right? No, but seriously, in reality, though, I mean, he's playing the Saints, and we're going to go through Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor here in a second, and they don't have the matchups that Devon Etienne has this week. He's got New Orleans at home off a bye week. We know that Etienne's floor has been nothing worse than like 15 to 16 points in a full PPR, and we know his ceiling is about 40. So in this matchup, I want him in this one. Bijan Robinson at number 2 at the New York Jets, I think is also a great matchup. Listen, one thing is very clear from Kirk Cousins playing is that without Bijan, they have nothing. I mean, they can't even target Darnell Mooney that often. So they've got Drake London and they've got Michael Penix out. So it is the Bijan Robinson show with a little bit of Mooney sprinkled in there. And at the New York Jets, who don't know what they're doing, I will definitely take that matchup over McCaffrey's at 3 and JT's at 4. McCaffrey goes to Cleveland to take on that Browns defense. Now, I've discussed this over the weeks. The Browns defense isn't a problem from a run perspective as much as it is from a pass and a pass rush perspective. But it is not bad, number 1. And McCaffrey, number 2, has not been very efficient. So if they can keep him out of the end zone, maybe minimize his pass catching upside, I think they can do both. Then what's the upside here with him getting like 20 carries with 60 yards. I mean, that's basically what he's been doing, 3 yards per carry. So this week, I'm fading McCaffrey just a little bit, right alongside Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor plays the Houston Texans this week, a hot Houston defense. I'm not big on that. If you look at JT's recent history versus the Houston Texans, it's been okay because JT's a stud, but it's not his 25 to 30 plus point ceiling that he usually gets. Now, he's an MVP candidate this year in my eyes, so I'm definitely not having him outside of tier 1, but I don't love this matchup at all, and I don't think you should either. Not that you should bench JT. I'm just saying this is a little bit of a statement ranking for both him and McCaffrey this week. Jahmyr Gibbs at 5 to round out this big first tier because I think all these guys have that upside this week. Versus Green Bay in tomorrow's Thanksgiving Day matchup. I cannot wait for Thanksgiving. Let me know if you are with me. It's my favorite holiday. Jahmyr Gibbs versus the Green Bay Packers. Listen, Green Bay's defense in theory, yes, it's very good. But again, I've discussed this all week as well. Detroit usually does well on Thanksgiving. And number 2, I could see this one going really well for Jahmyr Gibbs if the passing game is not up to par. So I do think Jahmyr Gibbs could be in the spot where we see one of his boom games, probably not to the extent that we just saw because the Packers defense is way better than the Giants. But a 30-point game, I think that's absolutely in the cards because he's their clear RB1 at this point. Dave Montgomery is not a threat. I think Jahmyr Gibbs belongs in tier 1. Dropping down to our next tier, I've got Josh Jacobs at 6 and James Cook at 7. So Josh Jacobs returns to the lineup this week. Emmanuel Wilson was fun, but now it's back to Josh Jacobs. Goes to Detroit tomorrow, and I think this is a hit or miss matchup. I think Detroit's defense has actually looked very good outside of last week. But of course, last week was a huge blemish on the record. So are they good or are they not good? Maybe now's not the time for them. But one of the things that's keeping Josh Jacobs outside of tier 1 is because of the fact I don't trust this injury to just all of a sudden, poof, go away, and Josh Jacobs is back to handling 30 opportunities a game. I do still think there will be a little bit of a split there. Josh Jacobs hasn't been super efficient, but I can always rely on him to get in the end zone at least once a game. James Cook at 7. The matchup is great. I don't care what anybody says about the Steelers' defense from a numbers perspective. This defense is atrocious, and Mike Tomlin bears full and complete responsibility for overpaying one of the worst defenses in the league. That is the highest paid defense in the league. James Cook could have always a big game, really against anybody. I trust them to be able to get this offense going. They are in dire straits right now, along with the Steelers, but they're just a better run team than the Pittsburgh Steelers are. So I think James Cook probably has one of his bigger performances this week, but of course can't have him in tier 1 because they just go away from him too often for you to really rely on that consistently. Derrick Henry and Chase Brown at 8 and 9 to round out this tier. They're taking on each other in tomorrow's Thursday night matchup. I cannot wait for this game because if the history shows anything, and it means anything this year, this could be a freaking fantasy fest, man. It could be awesome. So I just want both these guys. Because of matchup, everybody basically gets a bump up in this game, and I want Derrick Henry, I want Chase Brown. Derrick Henry is starting to rumble as the team is on 5 straight wins. He's also, ironically, had some of his best performances over those last 5 games. So I do think Derrick Henry finding consistency because the offense is putting up points, and I would also say that the Bengals offense cures any problem that you could have. So I think he has a good one. And then Chase Brown at number 9 at the Baltimore Ravens. The way I look at this is, listen, Baltimore's defense has done well, but when Joe Burrow comes back tomorrow, it changes the game. I mean, this is a high-flying matchup. It's a divisional matchup. The Bengals, maybe they still view themselves as having a shot at the division. I mean, they're not out of it technically. Chase Brown, though, has just been very good in fantasy because he's very involved on a passing game basis. So I think both these guys are really great plays. Dropping down to the next tier, I've got them both over Ashton Genty this week and Kyren Williams. So with Ashton Genty, a lot of people probably will argue with me on this because they're playing the Chargers defense. The way I see it is, look, the Raiders are going nowhere and nowhere fast. And Chip Kelly, I did not like the hire at the time. I don't think it was bad that they let him go, but it's not going to fix any problems, that's for sure. So I don't see this team getting any better, and the Chargers are off a bye week. So I don't know if this is Ashton Genty's greatest day. I mean, we all know that Genty's got a great floor, and that's what keeps him in this range consistently. And I do think the matchup maybe is favorable to him, but this team is going downhill fast. But I kind of want to line this up on FS Roundup right now. I'm going to go start a start-sit poll for Week 13. So I'm going to look up Chase Brown, then go to chat, then go to start a poll for Week 13, and I'm going to add Ashton Genty into this, and I want you to go vote on this one. Let me know what you think. Am I wrong on this one? Does the community think that I'm wrong? Let me know because it's free to vote, free to post your own poll. And if you want access to this week's top 300 rankings this week, because nobody's on bye weeks, if you want access to the automatic waiver tool, the comparison feature, and the league sync-up feature, you could do it with the premium subscription, or if you refer a friend and somebody else signs up using you as a reference, both you and your friend, they get a free month on our service entirely. But if you just want to do a full team breakdown from me where we'll have a live stream and a live dialogue back and forth to discuss trade ideas, waiver ideas, and any ideas to make your team better before the playoffs, we can also do a team breakdown for you as well when you submit your team to fsroundup@gmail.com. And after the payment goes through, we will go ahead and break down your team. Now, at number 11, Kyren Williams at Carolina. I think this matchup is really good. And I think somebody asked me on Monday night after the Sunday night game where Kyren did nothing. And the question basically was, what do you have concerns with Kyren moving forward? And I said, listen, Kyren is what he is. Like, he's going to be involved, and he'll have a 30-point ceiling sometimes, but then there's going to be weeks where he's not as involved in the game plan. And here's a news flash. This is a pass-first team, but it is against Carolina. They just gave up a bunch to Christian McCaffrey. I would imagine that Kyren Williams probably has a bounce-back game at some point, just so he knows that he's not losing importance to this team, because he is very important to the team. So at some point, he'll have a big ceiling game, and you'll feel ridiculous for benching him. This ranking, more than anything, is a statement ranking to say, I haven't really lost sight of the big picture with Kyren Williams. Javonte Williams is at 12, and Rico Dowdle's at 13 to round out the tier. So Javonte Williams, the only problem with him is that he hasn't been in the end zone lately. And one thing we've kind of learned about Javonte this year is he's still not much of a big play threat. Like, he's not getting a ton of tremendous runs that go a long way. A lot of what it's built on is volume and red zone efficiency. He's kind of a Josh Jacobs type of back this year, but without the touchdowns consistently, because the last couple of games, they haven't been there. Still, from a workload perspective, I don't think I could see myself ranking him much lower than this. And Rico Dowdle at 13. It's the opposite problem. Rico Dowdle can break off big plays. He can get in the end zone if you give him the freaking ball. But they're not doing that lately. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the fact that he is injured, and I have said it a lot. He doesn't look like the same player as he did before the groin injury happened to him like a month ago. And they haven't been giving him as much work. So I worry about that. This matchup isn't great. He's definitely dropped to my rankings as a result of all this that's going on, because I don't know what I think about him moving forward. I would like to buy in. I do think he's good, but I don't think that they believe that he's fully healthy right now. And that's the crux of the issue. Dropping down to our next tier, we've got Quinshon Judkins at 14 and Travion Henderson's at 15. So these two rookies, man, obviously they've got the electricity. It just comes down to matchup. And Quinshon Judkins' matchup, in theory, should be really good. Versus San Francisco, it's a defense that can be taken advantage of. We just know Cleveland. And we don't know what we don't know about Shedeur, which is Shedeur Sanders. Is this going to be consistent, or is it going to be more of a week-to-week thing? Because it's not like Shedeur Sanders is a high completion percentage guy. He makes big plays, but it does open up the offense a little bit more, which is kind of why I like Judkins a little bit this week. But he did get a little injured in this past game, so that kind of makes me wonder, is there going to be more of a workload split between him and Dylan Sampson or him and Jerome Ford? I don't know what I ultimately think, but I'm kind of factoring that into the decision a little bit, which is why he's not much higher than 14. And then Travion Henderson versus the New York Giants on Monday night. This one, in theory, should go really well. I mean, Travion Henderson is in great position to play a terrible defense that just fired their defensive coordinator. Like, it should, in theory, work out really well for him. And we also have kind of confirmation now that he is definitely their lead back. Was it a result, though, of Ramondre's first game back? That's still a possibility. And I don't want it to be, but I'm not ruling that out. So I do think, keep an eye on this one. I would have him much higher ranked if I knew for 100% fact he was the running back one, but I don't know that yet. But this week will tell a big story. Breece Hall at 16 and Saquon Barkley is at 17. Breece Hall, to me, this feels like a good matchup. Last week against the Ravens, I did not buy into the matchup. But again, Breece has always been a player that it doesn't really matter what matchup is. He can do it against anybody. Really what it comes down to is your defense good enough to key in on him and stop him, because he's their only real threat. And I think he's such a great player that could break off a big play at any point. And he has an opportunity this week against Atlanta's defense. So I've got him ranked over someone that I know gets the volume, but also I know doesn't have the same big play threat. Saquon Barkley is not the same player this year. He is not. And whether it's injuries that are holding him back, by the way, he is questionable as of the time of this filming. I would imagine he'll play on Black Friday, but he is questionable dealing with injuries. And with Breece, like, I know I get the workload and I get the big plays. So yeah, Saquon Barkley has fallen to this place very rightfully. I know I get 20 or so carries a game from him basically the last month, but I know I also get nothing else unless there's, a significant amount of pass catching upside, or if they're inside like the 7-yard line, but no closer than the 3. So Saquon, it just isn't working this year. And I don't think it's going to get much better this week against the Bears. And then Travis Etienne at 18 to round out the tier. He's going to Tennessee to play the Titans. The matchup in theory is great. I still just worry about the Bayshul Tootin thing. Like, I don't think we've seen the end of Bayshul Tootin, and I do think last week what I was saying ahead of the week was the only thing that could stop Bayshul Tootin, I think, is the injury he sustained after he was basically the running back one the previous week. Like, he was leading the backfield before he went down. So I don't know if another week healthier, that thing changes again. And that's my problem with Etienne, is I can see a little bit of a workload split here, but if it is the same amount of volume, Etienne is on a hot streak. And I do think that could continue heading into Tennessee this week. Dropping down to our next tier, we've got R.J. Harvey at number 19 and Jaylen Warren at 20. So with R.J. Harvey, I don't know, actually. I was going to say he should, in theory, get more work. But, I mean, we saw him against Kansas City without J.K. Dobbins, too. And he was very limited. And I think that's going to be the story for a lot of the year. I think the difference between this matchup and Kansas City, first of all, obviously Kansas City is a much tougher matchup for running backs than Washington is. But the other thing that I'm thinking about here is if it's going to be a blowout, this typically feels like the game you'd want to give a rookie back some confidence heading into a deep stretch for your playoff run. And not only a playoff run, but to lock up home seed. So I do think that R.J. Harvey actually does have a pretty good game in this one, even if he doesn't get in the end zone a bunch. I think he'll be efficient on his work, and he'll probably get a decent amount of it. Jaylen Warren, on the other hand, I don't know what to think. I will tell you this, from a Steelers fan's perspective, not much has changed aside from the fact that Kenneth Gainwell is on a freaking heater with touchdowns lately. Like, he has been really involved at the end zone, and even like the play that you saw last week when he just took that, fake tush push in for the end zone score. I do think it's worth noting that just by touches, Jaylen Warren still is the clear RB1, and he has been efficient this year. So it is a matchup I do think he could take advantage of. I'll go ahead and put Warren here at 20 because There definitely is something to this Kenneth Gainwell thing and him getting in at the red zone a lot more. Woody Marks at 21, and Amarian Hampton, welcome back. You go to 22, though. Woody Marks, I would play him over Amarian Hampton this week. And I know he was bad last week, and I know I got it wrong. But listen, this is a guy who has taken over the backfield. It is basically official at this point. Nick Chubb is nowhere to be found, and even if he was to be found, it's very clear that Woody Marks is the better, more efficient player at this point. That being said, don't love the matchup this week quite as much in Indianapolis, so I can see this going wrong. And obviously, Hampton's matchup is much better versus the Raiders, but there's a couple things you can't forget about. First of all, we don't know for sure if he is going to return, but if he does return, I already saw reports that him and Kamani Vidal could split a lot of work in his first week back. Yeah, congratulations for figuring that one out. That doesn't take a rocket scientist to know. This guy has missed 2 months with an ankle injury. You think he's just going to come back in and handle 100% of the work? That never happens with anybody. So I don't think that Amarian Hampton is a shoo-in to be dominant in this game. I do think that he's going to take some work back time, but if there is a week to bring anybody back, it's against the freaking Raiders. So even if he's capped with work, I could still see him getting in the end zone in this one, and that's why he's inside the top 25. Dropping down to our next tier, Kenneth Gainwell, Zach Charbonnet, 23 and 24. And really, you can see this tier, it's a lot of split backfields. But with this tier in particular, this matchup I like. I do think versus Minnesota, it's not that the Vikings defense is bad. I've said this a lot. What it comes down to is they're going to break. The damn breaks when your offense sucks. Maybe it's better with Max Brosmer this week in Minnesota. Probably not much better, though. Ultimately, I just think Walker is still got to be ranked above Charbonnet because he is a bigger play threat and he can take one to the house from any point on the field. But Charbonnet gets the red zone work, so it's just going to be a constant ping pong back and forth of who is the better fantasy play. That's why you've got to keep them basically attached to the hip in rankings. But I do think out of split backfields, this is one of my favorite tandems this week. DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, 25 and 26. These two guys, I have no idea actually what's about to happen. The only thing I do know is it's a really, really tough spot. In Philly, off a bad loss to the Eagles, they're 7-point underdogs on Black Friday. This is not an ideal spot for the Bears. And I do think the Bears have done really well. I'm actually giving the Bears tons of props. Ben Johnson is clearly the right coach, and he's gotten the running game going. But the problem is, with Swift, he's starting to lose more and more and more work every week to Kyle Monangai. So Kyle Monangai, to me, if you've got him, definitely don't drop him. And I would say that if you have him, he can be played over a lot of guys. I would consider playing him over someone like Andre Yeshivas this week. To be completely honest with you, I do think that both these guys have their upside, and Swift could easily break off a big run. But Monangai at this point is a very consistent and stable red zone back that they're going to continue to utilize. But the matchup is not great. And then Kareem Hunt's at 27 to round us out. At Dallas this week, and the matchup, I don't know if it's good or not anymore. Honestly, we've seen 2 weeks now with Kyren Williams in Dallas, and it's been a lot tougher to run on that team, and the pass rush has gotten better. I don't know what to think. And I do think that obviously you've got to factor in Pacheco coming back, but I don't worry about that as much as I worry about the matchup. I think the matchup more than anything scares me because with Pacheco, we know he's not going to take the short yardage and the red zone work. That's been Kareem's game this whole year, and he will continue to do that because he's been very effective doing it. But this matchup, I don't think is what it used to be at the beginning of the year because Kyren Williams has made a big impact on that team already. Dropping down to our last tier, our last three, Tyrone Tracy Jr. is at 28, and Bucky Irving lands at 29. Yeah, that's right. Tyrone Tracy Jr. at New England, I would rather play him over Bucky this week because when you look at Tracy, efficiency is back up and he's getting the majority of the work at this point. Now, Singletary is still involved. That's why he can't be much higher than this, and I don't love the matchup particularly. But Tracy is a good pass catcher. He's getting a lot of work on the ground, and he's hitting big plays. It's starting to kind of come together with Tracy, so I can see myself ranking him higher than this in future weeks, but still, Singletary's there. And I don't love this matchup. That kind of anchors him at 28 for me. Bucky Irving at 29. This is where he lands for me, guys. Very similar to Amarian Hampton, where I don't think that when he comes back, and I think it will be this week, I'm not convinced that Bucky Irving's just going to handle a bunch of work. Like, why would you do that to a player who, again, has missed about 2 months? And we don't even know, like, what his full workload's going to be. I would imagine there's going to be some Sean Tucker. I would imagine there's going to be some Rachaad White. And the other thing is that they're a weaker offense right now. Bucky Irving has a banged-up quarterback with Baker. Even if he doesn't play, you've got Teddy Bridgewater. There's a lot of things going on here. Arizona's defense can be good as well. They haven't been great, but they do have the potential to be really good. So I'm not confident remotely in Bucky being a great play this week. And then Devin Neal is in here at the top 30 to round us out. And he's going to Miami to play the Dolphins. So everything would point to Alvin Kamara missing at least one game with this knee injury that he got. Now, he avoided major knee injury, so you don't need to drop Kamara or anything like that. Not that he's a must-hold. But Devin Neal, I would say, there's just no other backup. I mean, they've got Audric Estime back there right now. So if there is no Kamara, it's going to be Devin Neal. And this was a guy who was a very interesting prospect. Coming out of Kansas, I liked him way better than he was drafted. And he's a pass catcher, and he's been a very good, efficient running back. So I do think that Devin Neal has an opportunity in this one. I don't think he's going to be great, but there's definitely an opportunity here against the Miami Dolphins, and that's why he's in the top 30. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below, and if you want to see the top 30 wide receiver rankings on the week, click on this video right here.